So I decided to head down to the hardware store and get some rope. I was going to hang myself. But when I got to the store, they still had 20 minutes before they opened. That's when I noticed a coffee shop next door that I'd never seen before. I felt some strange energy pulling me in. It was a strange energy that I'd never felt before. So I decided to go have a cup of coffee until the hardware store opened up. Now, I don't know if God sent me to this coffee shop or not, but what happened that day changed the course of my life forever. When I walked in, I saw a man sitting at a little round table with his eyes closed and some earbuds in. I spotted him immediately because he had a tattoo of a priest's collar on his neck. I figured he was meditating and thought that it was a bit odd to be meditating in public. But hey, what do I know? But just a few minutes later, he opened his eyes. When he bent down to tie his shoe, he started laughing.
That was fast.
He immediately got up to order a coffee. Intrigued, I got in line behind him. "What kind of meditation were you doing?" I asked.
Oh, I wasn't meditating. I was just trying to tune my brain. When I got here, I realized that I left my wallet at home. So I was trying to manifest a cup of coffee, and when I went down to tie my shoe, this $5 bill was lying there. Someone must have dropped it walking by. It wasn't there when I sat down.
I remember reading about manifestation in the Bible, and I know that Jesus manifested all kinds of miracles. But this guy? So you just wished for $5 and suddenly found that $5 bill?
Well, not exactly, but I did manifest this coffee, and that's just the way God chose to do it. Why don't you come sit down at my table when yours is ready? I'll tell you more about it.
I'll never forget the story he told me at the table that day.
I used to be a priest in the Catholic Church. In 2017, I had the pleasure of visiting the Vatican to meet Pope Francis for outstanding service in my church. It was a dream come true for me, and I was so excited and honored. Well, it just so happened that the same week I was visiting the Vatican, new writings were discovered by biblical scholars at the prestigious Oxford University. The writings talked about secret teachings to his brother James, teaching where Jesus reveals information about the heavenly realm and future events. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I was intrigued and excited that I was at the Vatican so that I could discuss this breaking news with the highest level authorities in the world. The next evening, I had dinner with the Pope as part of my celebration. There were loads of high-ranking bishops and other members of the church there. About halfway through the dinner, I worked up the courage to ask Pope Francis what the newly discovered writings meant. His demeanor flipped like a light switch. I was told never to bring up the subject again, and that those writings were heretical, meaning they went against the Word of God. I was confused. I thought everyone would be excited to discuss the new discovery. The mood for the rest of the dinner was off. No one made eye contact with me for the rest of the evening, until I got back to my quarters, when suddenly an elderly priest slipped in and closed the door. What he told me that night floored me. He said that those newly discovered writings were part of a secret document that showed how to manifest miracles like Jesus did. That's what the heavenly realm and future events part was referring to. So if you knew how to get in tune with God's frequency, you could manifest anything your heart desires, which is obviously incredibly powerful. Problem is, the church didn't want this information to get out. They were afraid it would fall into the wrong hands and be used for evil, so they covered it up for nearly 2,000 years. I think he could tell that I was a little skeptical because he actually pulled out his iPhone and showed me some pics he managed to sneak. Luckily, I'm able to read Greek, and there it was in print, right in front of my eyes. Jesus telling his brother exactly how he could manifest miracles so that he could carry on after Jesus' death. And there were way more letters than what were famously discovered at Oxford University a few years ago. I spent about 15 jaw-dropping minutes reading the letters, trying to process what I was reading, and the fact that the church had been covering up this information for 2 centuries. Before the old priest left my quarters that night, he told me to drop the subject. I was instructed not to bring it up again, for my own safety. I tossed and turned all night with this knowledge rolling around in my head. After a sleepless night, I got ready to meet the Pope one final time at a ceremony recognizing my service. But I just couldn't stop thinking about what the old priest had told me the night before, and this would be my last opportunity to talk to the Pope in person. I couldn't let this opportunity pass me by. I had to ask the Pope if this was true. When I asked him about the teachings and if what I heard was true, the ceremony was abruptly canceled before it even got started. I was escorted out of the building and promptly sent back to the States. After I got home, I was notified by my lead priest that I was banned from the church for life. My priesthood revoked. I saw everything that I worked so hard for evaporate in the blink of an eye. But after seeing Jesus' secret teachings for myself, I knew I had to look more into this.
After I picked up my jaw off the floor, I had to know more. I asked the ex-priest, "So what's the deal? How come I haven't been able to manifest anything worthwhile? My entire life has been a complete failure, and I've tried praying to God, meditating, practicing the law of attraction, all of it."
Let me see if I can explain using an analogy. Did you ever listen to the radio in your car?
I do. I love to listen to the news in the morning on the way to work.
Me too, but unfortunately I broke my antenna off in the car wash the other day, and now I can't tune into any stations.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, well, what really sucks is that's how 99% of people's brains are functioning. Their antenna is basically broken, so they can't tune into the right frequency to manifest God's blessings. But it's not your fault. Mountains of scientific research confirm that our brains are wired for negativity, which makes it impossible to manifest God's blessings. It's like your brain came from the factory with a broken antenna.
Our brains have antennas? I asked quizzingly.
Not physical antennas that you can see, but they basically work the same way. Your brain needs to be at a certain frequency to be able to manifest God's blessings, and both sides need to be at this exact frequency for it to work. I'm sure you've heard of left brain people and right brain people before.
I nodded along.
Well, that's because the brain basically has two sides, but people use one side more than the other. Artists and creative type folks use the left side of their brain, while analytical type people like engineers and accountants are dominant on the right side of the brain. But in order to manifest the way Jesus talked about, your brain needs to vibrate at a certain frequency called theta, or as I call it, the God frequency. And if both sides aren't vibrating at this exact frequency, it's like trying to get reception on your car radio with no antenna, just like Jesus talked about in the letter to his brother. You see, back then, they used meditation and prayer. Some of Jesus' greatest miracles were performed after he famously went to the desert to fast for 40 days. That's because he spent 40 days meditating and getting his brain in perfect balance at the exact right frequency. And here's the thing, that was over 2,000 years ago, before all the technology and overwhelm of modern times that keeps our brains even further out of balance and out of tune, making it harder than ever to put our brains at the God frequency. But in order to manifest the way Jesus talked about in the Bible and in his secret teachings, your brain must be tuned to this very specific God frequency. Now, there are people who can put their brain into theta after mastering high-level meditation. Jesus and his disciples did it in biblical times, but most people aren't able to accomplish this, even if they're too proud to admit it. But thanks to modern technology, there is an easier way to change the frequency of your brain. A way that takes all the work out of it. It's a simple 15-minute daily routine that I've adopted, and it's as easy as sitting in your favorite easy chair and popping on a set of headphones for 15 minutes. There's literally no work required. Even researchers at Harvard University admit that this is a legit method for manipulating cortical synchronization, and that you can take advantage of the brain's response after using this method. You see, this solution requires a certain type of sound wave therapy, commonly called binaural beats. Basically, binaural beats are two different tones with slightly different frequencies, one for each ear, so you need to use stereo headphones. When listening to these two different tones, your brain receives them as a beat frequency, hence the beat part of binaural beats. And that's when your brain is manipulated for cortical synchronization, which is just a fancy way of saying that the vibrations in your brain are synced to a certain frequency. And that's exactly what you need to be able to make your manifestations reality. Both sides need to be synced up, but at the God frequency. Listening to binaural beats makes synchronizing your brain effortless. It takes all the work out of it. All you have to do is pop your earbuds in and listen. Your brain will automatically be synced up, which is a lot easier than mastering meditation. Because if you're like me, you struggle mightily trying to meditate. And 99% of people can't reach a balanced state through meditation alone anyway, much less reach the exact frequency required to manifest God's blessings. That's why binaural beats have